more immigration statistics. So immigration statistics too. There is a rise in immigration. America is a great destination. About 20% of all the immigration that happens in the world, 20%, one-fifth of all the immigration is coming to the United States. So, and it's not just Mexicans. In fact, you're seeing more Central Americans and Guatemalans and Indians and Chinese and Hong Kong and lots of different people. So, in fact, the Mexicans, more Mexicans are leaving than coming. Between 2009 and 2014, 1 million Mexicans returned to Mexico, whereas 870,000 arrived here. So between a span of 5 years, 1 million left. 870,000 came. So that means that's a net negative 130,000. More Mexicans left America than came into America. The peak of immigration was in 1890. In the United States, the peak of immigration was in 1890. You had a lot of upheaval that was happening in Germany. So 14.8%, 15% of the nation was foreign-born. Now it's 14%. So we're getting real close to it, but we're not at 15%. That 15% of the nation was foreign-born. Most of them were Eastern Europeans and Germans and Irish, Italians, Russian, Jews, Canadians, Latin Americans, Greeks, Hungarians, Poles, Slovaks, Bohemians, Russian, and Polish Jews. There were 2 million Jews who came over. 9 million immigrated in 1900 in the first decade. So there were fewer European immigrants here recently. In 1960, 75% of the foreign-born were from Europe. 2015, only 11%. So we were getting a lot of European immigrants from 1890 up until 1960, but now most of them are not from Europe. 12 million Mexicans, 3 million Chinese. So, okay, Chinese and Indians make up a big, Mexicans are, what was I saying, Guatemala and some, Guatemalan, there's maybe a month when Guatemalans, there are more Guatemalans coming in than Mexicans, I don't know. So 12 million Mexicans out of the European immigrants, right? So 11% are from Europe. I don't know what that exactly equals to, but in 2015, 12 million Mexicans come to the United States. 3 million Chinese came to the United States in 1 year, 2015. 2.4 million Indians, 2 million Philippines, 1.4 million El Salvadorians, 1.3 million Vietnamese, 1.2 million Cubanese, 1.1 million from both the Dominican Republic and South Korea. So, again, that's, I guess, the total amount of foreign-born. Most of the total amount of foreign-born. So these aren't the illegals. These are legal. 75% of them are legal. Or 66% of the foreigners who live in our country, the foreign-born, are legal immigrants. So if you see a foreign-born person, don't assume they are illegal just because they are Mexican, Chinese, Indian, Filipino, El Salvadorian, Vietnamese, Cuban, Dominican Republican, or South Korean. They could very well be legal. Of the foreign-born population, 51% own their own homes. This is 2015, compared to 65% of the native-born. So 65% of Americans own their own home, whereas 51% of the foreign-born own their own homes. The naturalized citizens own homes at 65% rate, just like the native-born. 9% of the working-class immigrants with children get food stamps and Social Security, compared with 15% of the native-born population. So natives get 15%, 50%, 15% of Americans who are born here get food stamps and Social Security, and 9% of the working-class immigrants with children get food stamps. Current stats of the U.S. demographics, so this is just where America stands today, and this is November 8th, 2018. We have 329 million Americans. 82% of Americans live in cities and suburbs. The male life expectancy is 78 years of age. Female life expectancy is 82 years. Each woman has about 1.7 children. There is no national language. 32 of the 50 states, including Colorado, has established English as a national language. 79% of Americans speak English. 13% of Americans speak Spanish. White people make up 246 million of the American population, 78% total. So there's 78% white folks. Non-Hispanic whites are less, 63% non-Hispanic whites. And the non-Hispanic population will drop below 50% in 2045, in 26 years. In 26 years, the non-Hispanic white population will drop below 50%. In 2040, Islam will replace Judaism as the #2 religion in the U.S. So that's going to happen in 21 years. Islam will replace Judaism as the number 2 religion, and the non-Hispanic population will drop below 50%. In 2060, the U.S. will have 417 million human souls living here. 41 years from now, that's nearly 100 more million people in 41 years. The U.S. Census considers Hispanic as an ethnicity, not a race. So of the Hispanic people that are here, 17%, 54 million Hispanic people are here. 2010, 84% were non-Hispanic, 16% were Hispanic. 97% constitute one race, so we have 324 million lily whites, very, very white, only white, and which makes up 73% of the total population, and 40 million Don Cheadle blacks, very, very black, 13%. So 73% very, very white, 13% very, very black. American Indian, Asian 5%, American Indian 1%, other 5%, 2 or more 3%, and then white and black together 1%. So most of the whites and blacks are very black or very white, very few are mixed. So it's more like a salad bowl, not like a melting pot. 54 million Hispanics, 16% versus 40 million blacks, 13%. So we have more Hispanics in America than we have black folks. 54 million Hispanics, 40 million black folks. We got 14 million more Hispanics than blacks, 3%. 16% versus 13% versus 73% white. 11.1 million illegals live here. 11.1 million illegals is equal to Colorado plus Kentucky plus Alaska and Vermont combined. So if you put Colorado, all the people of Colorado, Kentucky, Alaska, and Vermont combined, that's how many illegal aliens we have here. 11.1 million illegals. Something's got to be done. We got to give them amnesty or put them on trains, right? We got to deport them or find a place for them. Just allowing them to live in our streets and live in the gutters and the alleys and the sewers. It's easier. It makes more sense if they turn themselves in, then they'll be charged and they won't be allowed to come back for another 10 to 20 years. So it makes more sense for once they get into our borders to stay here and to chance it. And if they can have a kid while they're here, well then hell, that's just as American as every, 329 million Americans who were born here. You could take half of Florida, so the population of Colorado is 5.7 million. It's the number 21 most populous. So we got about 6 million people in Colorado. There's 4.5 million people in Kentucky, 4.9 million people in Alabama, 21 million in Florida, 1.4 million people, Americans live in Hawaii, 1.1 million Montana, and 760,000 North Dakota, 78,000 Wyoming, 26,000 Vermont, 737,000 Alaska. So if we were to just take half of Florida, right, half of Florida, that's how many illegals we have, about half of Florida. Or put Kentucky, Alaska, Vermont, and Colorado combined. Or you could combine Vermont, Alaska, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, Hawaii, and Kentucky. Or you could combine, well, I already said, well, Colorado, Kentucky, Alaska, Vermont. I mean, those are pretty sizable states, right, or half of Florida, if you just want to think of it like that. So that's what 11 million people of illegals look like, to give you that visual. It's a lot of people, but it also just represents, what, 4% of the population? 329, 11% divided in 3. So maybe 3%, 2% of the population is illegal. Couple more numbers. The immigration policies under Barack Obama. Barack Obama deported more immigrants than every U.S. president in the history of America. Obama clocked in over 2.5 million deportations. The main things that the federal courts are used for is throwing illegals out of the U.S. Over half of the federal courts are used for immigration purposes. Via mass trials, dozens are convicted, jailed, or deported. Rocket docket, slaughterhouse all at once. So they're getting rocket docket slaughterhouses too. 10% of those convicted represented only 10% of all the immigrants. So only 10% are getting convicted under Barack Obama. Asylum seekers and parents with children were exempted. ICE had arrested 300,000 immigrants under Obama, both 2010 and 2011. Of those 300,000 arrested, 200,000 were deported, 2010 and 2011. The House GOP had killed a Senate bill passed in 2013 with a supermajority that would have reformed immigration policies. Barack Obama tried to reform immigration policies, but the Republicans Republicans in the House said, no, we want to fuck up the immigration policies so that way we could get Donald elected and then he could go and fix everything. 2013, you had 435,498 deportations. Nearly 500,000 in 2013 were deported. Overall, 2.5 million deportations. Barack Obama, #1 deportation president, the deporter-in-chief. Bill Clinton, 97, deported 114,000. 96, 69 were deported. In 2015, DHS arrested 462,000, deported 333,000. In 2016, DHS carried out 530 apprehensions and 344 were removed. So the numbers for 2015, 2016 are identical. About half a million are deported, 500,000 are arrested, and about 300,000 are being removed. George W. Bush, Baby Bush, 2003, there were 10,000 Department of Homeland Security employees. In 2008, there's 17,000 Department of Homeland Security employees, so that was increased by another 7,000. ICE increased from 2,700 to 5,000 from the 2003 to 2008 period. So ICE and the Homeland Security are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Donald's policy, while he is essentially the same as Barack Obama did show some leniency with the refugee countries and asylum seekers and the children. Barack Obama, I guess, at the end of his tenure, just didn't have a heart. He did, deport a shit ton of people. 10% were getting arrested and, chucked out of here. But the ones that weren't getting sit out here, where were they just released on our streets? Just dropped at a bus station somewhere? So Donald's policy is a bit harsher than Barack Obama. He's got a no-tolerance policy which goes after the immigrant families and asylum seekers that Barack Obama had been given a blind eye. Not a blind eye. He was, deporting all of them, but then towards the end there he started to soften up. So there was a Muslim ban. This is Donald Trump we're talking about. Remember, he wanted to have the Muslim ban. 7 countries were banned from entering the U.S., including every single Syrian refugee. So we bombed Syria, but Americans aren't going to take in the Syrian refugees, right? We're going to bomb the shit out of Syria and then let all those refugees just live in the hellhole that we created, just like Honduras. So goddamn Democrats, you want to go into Syria? Why is Syrian war so fucking important to the goddamn Democrats, these corporatist right-wingers? So the Democrats are right-wing on so many different issues that Donald's policy of zero tolerance policy is worse. It's harsher, but the Democrats are right-wing Republicans, so Democrats are Republicans, and Republicans are batshit crazy. So none of the refugees from Syria. Democrats, you don't want none of the Syrian refugees to have any safe haven sanctuaries. And then why the fuck do you think you can invade their country and bomb the fuck out of them? Let's see, one father, Barrios Mendoza. He had 6 American children. He was born here. He was deported. So the father was not here. These 6 children were born here, so 6 of his kids get to stay here, but the Barrios Mendoza was sent away. It sounds like Donald's policy is to round up the 11 million illegal and undocumented immigrants to go after the 11 million. There's 150,000 arrests in 2017, which is half of Obama's 2010 and 2011 arrests. So in 2017, Donald Trump could only arrest half of what was arrested in both 2015 and 2016. And then there was 100,000 deportations compared to 333,000 deportations. So Barack Obama was sending 3 more times the deportations, arresting more than twice the amount. So Donald Trump isn't even getting up to Barack Obama's levels when it comes to the arrest and deportation. His 2017 numbers are pathetic. 150,000 arrests, 100,000 deportations. At that rate, he's not going to even break 1 million. Barack Obama got 2.5 million deported. So 100,000 times 8, that's only 800,000. He won't even get close to the amount of people that were deported by Barack Obama if he keeps going at this same pace. ICE has opened 2,300 audits against employers who hire illegal and undocumented. So they are going after the employers too. ICE has opened up 2,300 audits against them. So of the 43 million immigrants, 21 million, 49% were limited English proficient. Under 32% of Americans have a bachelor's degree. of the Indians who immigrate here, 78% of Indians, 74% of the Taiwanese have bachelor's degrees. So the Taiwanese and the Indians are super smart. They have at least bachelor's degree. They got more college than most Americans do. And the Mexicans are the majority of the foreign-born population in New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona, 55% apiece, 51% in Idaho, compared to 2% in Hawaii, 1.4% in Massachusetts, and 0.7% in Maine. So of the places where the Mexicans are born, foreign-born, so both legal and illegal Mexicans, Texas and Arizona make up 55%, Idaho 51%. So where are the Mexicans going? The legal ones and illegal, they're going to Texas, Arizona, Idaho, compared to Hawaii, Massachusetts, and Maine, which is 2%, 1.4%, and 7%. If you're bitching about Mexicans, Hawaii, or Massachusetts, or Maine, fuck you. You're just a bunch of racist pieces of shit. They don't even make a dent in your total population. They're 1 out of 100 people. And then they're most likely legal. 75% are legal. So 10.7 million unauthorized immigrants, 11%, 24%. So let's see here. 11 million unauthorized immigrants live here, illegal aliens. 20 million have been naturalized. Of the total foreign-born population, you have temporary visas. 2 million people are here for temporary visas. Lawful permanent residents are 12 million. The naturalized are 20 million. And then the unauthorized. So out of all the foreign-born immigrants who live in America, 1 out of 4 are illegal, which means 3 out of 4 are legal. 3 out of 4 of the immigrants here are legal. They're either naturalized, lawful permanent residents, or temporary visa holders. 20 million, 12 million, and 2 million. Visas are issued by the Secretary of State. Homeland Security is in charge of immigration. So we have 2 different departments. One handles the visa, Secretary of State handles the visas, and then Homeland Security. Why don't we just put all them, Secretary of State should just take over immigration. Homeland Security, they don't know what the hell they're doing. They're killing those kids on the border. First, you have to determine the purpose of visit. Why do you want to come to the United States? This is the Secretary of State. If you want to get a visa to come to America, you got to say if you're going to be a tourist, whether you're here for business, employment, to study, you're an exchange student, to immigrate, to live here. And then there's a whole bunch of other ones. There's religious workers, transit visas for diplomats and foreign government officials, visas for employees of international organizations and NATO, crew member visas, refugees and asylum seekers, visas for victims of criminal activity, visas for victims of human trafficking. There's transit visas, medical treatment visas, official government travel, humanitarian and special services. To be eligible to apply for an immigrant visa, a foreign citizen must be sponsored by a U.S. citizen relative, U.S. lawful permanent resident, or prospective employer. So either a relative, U.S. citizen relative, a U.S. lawful permanent resident, or a prospective employer. You can sponsor a immigrant if you're a prospective employer and do it legally. So as an American, every American can apply for immigration status for a spouse, or for their children, or for their brother, sister, or their parents. So every American can get a wife from another country and have kids from another country, and then it's pushing it a little bit, but you can also get the parents and the brothers and the brothers and sisters of. So if I had a brother or sister or a parent, then I could immigrate them over to America too. There's also certain skilled workers, and then like I said before, if you're an employer, so you must be sponsored, because you can't come into America and use all the services, so you have to be sponsored if you want to come to America. So all the legal people must get in here because of permission of one of us, somebody from Edazini, an American. So that concludes the statistics for U.S. immigration. R.I.P. Felix and Jacqueline.